Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to TCS Ion Intelligem 2025. Before we move any further, may I please request Miss Soumya, Head Contests Powered by TCS Ion, to set the ball rolling.
A very happy new year to everyone. I'm thrilled to welcome you all to the national grand finale of the 7th edition of TCS Ion Intelligence. Today, we have come together to celebrate and cheer for the talented finalists of this prestigious contest. In just a few moments, we will witness an exciting finale where these brilliant minds will showcase their skills and compete for the coveted title. Congratulations to all the finalists for making it this far. Your journey itself is a testament to your hard work and determination. The topic, contest rounds, and the evaluation criteria have been meticulously crafted by a panel of experts, ensuring a unique and enriching experience every year. Our vision is to empower every student by enabling them to hone their skills and realize their full potential. At TCS Ion, we take immense pride in the fact that the contest continues to remain India's largest national level contest focused on the 21st century skills. We deeply appreciate the unwavering support of the school leaders and educators who have made this journey possible. To all the finalists, I wish you the very best. Remember, regardless of the outcome today, you have already proven yourselves as true intelligence. Each one of you shines brightly, and that's what we celebrate. And now, let the finale begin. Thank you, and over to you, Rashmi.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, time for us to welcome our host here today. This prolific speaker orator is the only professional woman quiz host across Asia. She was listed by the business world as a 40 under 40 and also received a global recognition from the Women Economic Forum. An alumnus of NITK Surathkal and IIM Calcutta, she is also the co-host of Tata Crucible and has been hosting TCS Ion Intelligem since its inception. Ladies and gentlemen, time for us to welcome Miss Rashmi Furtado.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the grand finale of TCS Ion Intelligem Global Citizenship for the senior category. This is the 7th year of TCS Ion Intelligem, a beautiful initiative that was created by TCS Ion to hone the future skills of the students of our country between classes 5 to 9. This, of course, is the senior category where we will talk to the students of classes 7, 8, and 9. While global citizenship may seem like a topic that's a little complicated for them at their age, you will be surprised and amazed at what they have to say. So first, let's get to know our finalists and then move into the grand finale. Our first finalist for the day, representing the Sanjay Godawat International School at Kolhapur, is Shlok Sachin Biyani. Following Shlok, representing the Hyderabad Public School, is Neena Kasturi. Following Neena, representing the Lotus Valley International School from Gurgaon, is Arshia Garg. Right. Up next, representing Ryan International School, Noida, is Pihu Anand. Following Pihu, representing the Sun City School from Gurgaon, is Arnav Gupta. And completing our lineup here today, representing the Indus International School, Bengaluru, is Ishan Jain. Well, ladies and gentlemen, these students have jumped through multiple hoops to reach this grand finale here today. They are well prepared. So it's time for us to move into the grand finale and into our first round, which is called Me in 30 Seconds. Here we go. Before we begin the grand finale, ladies and gentlemen, let me quickly introduce you to the esteemed jury panel that has joined us here today. First of all, we have Ms. Aparna Mathur, who is a leadership coach, facilitator with specific areas of focus like mental health and well-being, diversity and inclusion. We will, of course, get to know her a little better later on during our jury round. We also have Mr. Shravan Shetty, who has joined us here today. He is also a mentor, a leadership speaker, he is a trainer, and also a career coach. All right, so we have an amazing set of jury who have joined us here today. We will get to know them better later. For now, let us move into getting to know our finalists here today and understand what they have to tell us about themselves. Well, this entire grand finale is about global citizenship. So what we want to hear from our finalists, I mean, we already know their names and their schools. So what more can they tell us about themselves? Whatever they say, they have to tell us in the context of global citizenship on how, as a leader, they will uphold the values of global citizenship. So let's see what they have to say. All right, coming up first to introduce himself is Shlok. Shlok, you have 30 seconds, starting now.
Right, so my name is Shlok Sachin Biyani, and I see myself as a global citizen who embraces diversity and fosters empathy. A 12-year-old who ought to take responsibility for the well-being of our planet and its residents. I support human rights and I aspire to collaborate across borders, addressing global issues such as climate change and equality. So I hope to solve all difficulties with everyone and create a better future using global citizenship. Thank you.
All right, that was wonderful. Let's move on to Nina and see what she has to say about herself in 30 seconds. Nina, your time starting now.
Hello, I am Nina, age 12, 7th grader and a Gen Z, born in a hyper-connected world. As global citizens, we need to respect diversity, have empathy, and be able to engage in dialogue. This diversity includes not just race, culture, and tradition, but also gender identity, food choices, thoughts, and many more. As a global citizen, I am curious about people and what makes them them. My interest in trekking, swimming, sport, art, music, drama, food, and also math help me interact with people and build on my skills to be a global citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Well, let's move on to our next finalist here today. Arshia, it's your turn to introduce yourself. Please go ahead.
I, Arshia Garg, strongly believe that global citizens don't just see the world, they change it. Yo también puedo hablar español. Yes, I can speak Spanish too, and have taken every chance to learn and respect other cultures, putting we before I. Addressing global issues through events, practicing leadership and collaboration as a school prefect, and cross-cultural awareness through Epicent Camp at IIITH has honed me as a global citizen. Also a previous TCS ION winner, I inspire humanity over nationality. Thank you.
Thank you, Arshia. Let's move on to our next finalist here. Pihu, it's your turn. Your 30 seconds starting now.
According to Wangari Maathai, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, global citizenship is not just about where you live, but about how you live. A very good evening. My name is Pihu Anand, and I'm a student of grade 8 who firmly believes that she's a global citizen. Our entire planet is our home and not just a segment of it. Therefore, we must look past our differences, step forward, and unite to bring a great change to our planet. Thank you.
Time for us to move into our next finalist here today, ladies and gentlemen, and hear his thoughts. Let's listen to Arnav Gupta. You have 30 seconds of time. Here we go.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Arnav Gupta, and I study in grade 9 at the Sun City School, Gurgaon. I'm 13 years old and have a vast number of hobbies and interests like sports, music, geopolitics, and exploring the world. Traveling to multiple places has taught me that though my passport defines me to be an Indian citizen, I think I'm much more than that. I feel I'm a global citizen. My interests have taught me to embrace globalism and respect the cultures of every place on this planet. I feel rather fortunate to be born in the generation of the internet, where not only can my ideas transcend borders, but also be able to interact with different people instantaneously and understand their cultures and values. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnav. Let's move to our last finalist here today, Ishan, it's your turn to tell us about yourself. You have 30 seconds of time. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ishan of grade 9. For me, global citizenship means working together across borders to solve shared problems like climate change. It involves thinking globally but beginning to act locally to truly make a global impact. As a leader, I try my best to uphold the necessary values of global citizenship, and I strive to lead by example, showing how small actions can lead to big changes. Together, we can build a better future for everyone globally. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishan. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard them out. Interesting introductions about themselves. So let's move into the next round of our grand finale. Coming up is heads and tails. Here we go. This is an interesting round where our finalists will talk for and against a topic. And yes, each of them will talk on the same topic, but for and against. They have a minute's time, ideally 30 seconds for, 30 seconds against, but they are free to adjust that time for themselves. So let's take a look at the topic that our contestant would be speaking on, coming up on your screen, freedom of speech. Each of them will speak for and against this topic, freedom of speech. Contestants, remember, it's up to you how you want to divide your time, but 1 minute is all you get, and I will stop you at the end of the 60th second. All right? So let us start with Ishan for now, and then we will move back in the same order that we just came in. All right, Ishan, go ahead. Your minute's time on this topic starting now.
Freedom of speech is crucial to progress and democracy. It allows people to express their ideas or opinions, contest authority, and promote innovation. History has shown that movements for justice and equality began when individuals voiced their concerns, and without this right, societies may risk losing progress and growth as ideas are suppressed and voices are silenced. Freedom of speech is not just a right, it is the basic foundation to create a fair and forward-thinking world. However, on the other hand, while freedom of speech is important, it comes with responsibilities. As with great power comes great responsibility. Absolute freedom can lead to harmful consequences, such as hate speech, misinformation, and violence. When speech is uncontrolled, it can harm individuals, create division, and disrupt social harmony. To protect society, it's important to have reasonable limits that prevent harm while still allowing constructive conversation. Freedom of speech must be balanced with accountability to ensure it doesn't become a tool for harm. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ishan. Interesting points of view there. Let's move on to our next finalist. Arnav, it's your turn on this topic. Your minute's time starting now.
Martin Luther King said, "Our lives begin to end on the day we become silent about the things that matter." Freedom of speech is the most imperative component of a democratic and free society. It is a basic fundamental human right, and no one has the right to silence another human being. This right is the one that enables equality and is a stepping stone to a society where no one remains marginalized. This right also enables scholars and education to truly foster and develop genuine theories instead of once trying to propagate an idea. Just look at Galileo Galilei, for instance. He was punished for his theory by the church. And on the other hand, though, misinformation, hate speech, incitements, extremism, and radicalism. These are all problems which are caused due to the existence of ambiguous free speech laws. Every year, multiple people have to face digital abuse, cyberbullying, and hate remarks due to the ambiguous nature of free speech laws in the world. Misinformation on critical topics is also caused by free speech, and misinformation has in turn caused a lot of turmoil. Free speech laws of nations are what has caused such callous...
Your minute's time is up.
Yes,
Your minute's time is up.
Can I just give my closing remarks?
Quickly.
These ambiguous free speech laws are responsible for the callous community guidelines of platforms where abuse has been normalized. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Arnav. Let's move on to Pihu now. Pihu, go ahead. Tell us your views on freedom of speech. Your minute's time starting now.
Freedom of speech is an important human right which is provided to all of us. It allows citizens to express themselves, take part in public debate, and raise questions to the government without any fear. It allows the marginalized sections of the society to empower themselves so that they can also express their views and opinions. It also allows questioning, which further promotes lifelong learning, and this leads to the advancement of the world. However, freedom of speech is not absolute. Harassment and hate speech, especially on the grounds of culture, religion, region, etc., can hurt the sentiment of people and cause a chaos in our society. Public order can also be disturbed by the dissemination of misinformation among the public, and national security can also be breached by the spread of sensitive information among the public and to another nations. So, freedom of speech ought to be used judiciously, and radical restrictions should be put upon to check its validity. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pihu. Let's move on to our next finalist here today. Arshia, it's your turn. Freedom of speech and a minute's time. Go ahead.
Free speech is the right to progress, but only if progressed right. Freedom of speech empowers citizens to challenge government policies, as was also exercised to expose the Watergate scandal in 1970. It is the basis to all other freedoms in strengthening culture and uplifting minorities through shared dialogue. It inculcates ideas, sparking innovation, as also seen in our current discussion. Our Constitution and the UN grant free speech equality, but when it hurts another's dignity, I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it burning the very house it was meant to warm? Unregulated speech increases defamation cases, straining legal systems and delayed urgent rulings. Misinformation can destabilize economies. In 2021, Elon Musk's tweets impacted crypto prices. Cyberbullying and trolling on internet and media can instigate psychological distress. So let's add a little filter, common sense and responsibility. Because speech isn't always free. Sometimes it comes at a cost we can't really afford. Thank you.
Thank you, Arshia. Let's move on to our next finalist here today. Nina, it's your turn. Your minute's time starting now.
Freedom of speech is a fundamental right and critical to preservation of human rights. It is also one of the key pillars of democratic societies. Without freedom to speak freely and without censorship or restriction or the fear of retribution, marginalized communities, oppressed and survivors of abuse, or those who have been victimized by the state or private parties will not have the strength or courage or voice to speak up. On the other hand, in the modern digital and free world, there's now an increase in hate speech, false narratives, fake news and information, and an indiscriminate use of freedom that is otherwise considered fundamental. In this indiscriminate use has resulted in several instances where violence, hostility, or prejudice and discrimination has been instigated against the very people who were empowered by the freedom of speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Well, now it's time for us to listen to our last finalist who will complete this round for us. Shlok, it's your turn. Freedom of speech and a minute's time. Starting now.
Freedom of speech is the right to express your opinions, thoughts, and ideas without fear of punishment or discrimination. It empowers us to share our ideas and inspire change. It allows advice, suggestions, and tips to ameliorate innovation, progress, society, and service. It furthermore promotes democracy. It also liberalizes people and makes them independent. It allows people to have choices, opinions, freedom of expression, and emotions. It enrolls social change and moreover prevents government abuse. But on the other hand, freedom of speech lets the spread of fake news. It can permit people to discriminate or criticize. It may authorize the public to spread banned ideas like terrorism or rebellion. It provokes violence and riots. It may affect and harm cultural and religious sentiments. And as famously said in the Schneck case in 1919, the most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and causing panic. To conclude, true freedom comes not from saying anything without limit, but ensuring speech is used responsibly for the greater good. Thank you.
Thank you, Shlok. Ladies and gentlemen, time for us to move into the debate round of this grand finale here today. Coming up is Voice Your Views. Here we go. Voice Your Views is all about debating. All of them will debate on a topic that is coming up on your screen. Here we go. Slightly longer topic, but an interesting one. Should United Nations be the approving authority for all major decisions of countries in this world? A very, very interesting proposition, but what's going to happen if that happens? Let's see what our finalists have to say about this proposition. Finalists, remember you have 8 minutes of time to debate on this topic. I will let you know at the end of the 6th minute that you have 2 more minutes left, and at the end of the 8th minute, I will stop you. We would encourage you to arrive at a conclusion at the end of the 8th minute, so try your best to arrive at a conclusion, all right? Now, the most important part here is all of you will be managing yourselves and the floor. I will not be moderating the debate. Okay, I'm only your timekeeper for this round, so keep that in mind. Let's see what our contestants have to say on United Nations being the approving authority for all the nations. Your time for the debate on this topic starting now.
Hi guys. So,
If you don't mind, can I start?
yeah,
If you-
sure.
Thank you. So as we know, United Nations is like a one-of-a-kind body which unites majority of the countries of the world. However, United Nations itself as a body has many flaws. For example, United Nations says that they are an equal body. However, so much discrimination takes place inside. For example, the veto power in the Security Council has been given to 5 of the most developed countries in the world. If there is a decision to be taken and majority of the countries approve it and just one veto power denies it, the decision does not take place. So how can you call this system as equal and fair? This is the biggest flaw of United Nations. The second flaw which I would like to highlight is that United Nations failed at its initial mission. It was supposed to stop wars after World War II. However, the Ukraine-Russia war is going to celebrate its 3rd anniversary in the month of February. As we see, the Israel-Hamas war is still going on, and the Syria war, which is basically a civil war, it has been going on since 2011. What has United Nations done to stop these wars? So if United Nations is not able to do so much, how can we expect that it will be able to take other decisions of the world as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so, sure, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sure. No. It's fine.
Okay, so Fihu, I completely agree with you. I do understand that there's only one global body, but considering that, picture this, our world is like a sinking ship. Some countries are plugging holes, others are arguing over who caused the leaks, and few are busy drilling new holes. So I think considering how United Nations is the only voice that speaks for everyone, we must let UN approve the decisions with global implications, such as environmental policies, trade agreements, or security matters. Because if not UN, then who?
I would.
Right. So obviously this proposition seems very glamorous because, like you said, it provides a platform for global agreement and it ensures that major decisions do align with international laws and SDGs, etc. But on the other hand, absolute authority to the UN undermines sovereignty of nations and cultural uniqueness, which are both crucial for local governance and establishing authority of governments in their own countries. Additionally, global decision-making through the UN can be inefficient, as Pihu mentioned earlier, due to bureaucracy and political hierarchies, because the influence of powerful countries is much greater than that of smaller ones.
Yes, so I would like to add one more.
You speak in no, listen. So what I'd like to say is in most of my points, I agree with you guys. I fully agree that each nation should have their own autonomy over to decide their own major decisions, because obviously, as said, if we put the P5 members, then they will actually be the de facto governance. They'll be the de facto government of the nation, as if they will be taking most of the decisions, there will be no autonomy with the government. But at some points I disagree with is, firstly, talking about this United Nations, right? The UN has actually stopped a lot of wars. If you look at it, Saddam Hussein, right, he invaded Kuwait. It was because of Operation Desert Storm, which was sanctioned by the United Nations. It was because of that Kuwait could be liberated by coalition forces. Not just that, if we look at the Korean War of 1950, South Korea and UN forces were able to kick back North Korean forces back to, I believe, the 50th parallel. And they did all of this legally. And one more point I would like to put is that any major decision would not go to the Security Council itself if it is rejected in the General Assembly. So if there is a decision with which if a majority of 190 countries disagree with that decision will never actually go to the Security Council. So I just want us to keep that in mind.
Okay, but if that one thing I would just like to say that is stupid. If there's something which majority of the countries agree, it goes in the UN, and let's say one of the P5 country actually disagrees, they use their veto power, then it will not happen. That is also a mere fact. The thing is, United Nations, I agree very much. It has stopped many wars as well. But let's talk about Russia-Ukraine war, for example, in which one of the P5 countries is also involved. The UN has not been able to do much about it, taking into account that Russia is literally one of the most powerful countries of the world. And then I agree, UN is literally one of the only platforms which can stop a lot of things, global initiatives, etc. But then I agree with Ishan's point. How can we ensure the nation's autonomy if, I don't know, the UN takes all the major decisions? There should be something left for the countries to do as well, because the countries know their people the best. Another thing is that UN talks about human rights, but due to its jurisdictions, it cannot actually interfere into the people's matters. And many of the time, it does not even uphold human rights. That is something it should do. But again, the countries better govern themselves, and I don't think UN should interfere in each and every matter.
I'm really sorry, Nina. Okay,
Guys,
go ahead.
can we let the first timers speak who haven't like
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Nina, go ahead.
Can I speak?
Nina, go ahead.
May I speak?
Sure.
Shlok, maybe after Nina. She's
Yeah,
been
Nina
trying
and
for a long
Shlok,
time.
you guys can speak. first.
Yeah, sure.
While I do agree with all of the points that have been placed on the table, the UN has done a lot of good, especially when it comes to implementing humanitarian relief. And for the UN to actually stay relevant, it needs to be more inclusive in the Security Council, and no country should have a veto.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Shlok, your turn.
Look.
Right.
You have
And I
completed
also-
6 minutes.
Okay, please, Shlok, please hurry up so that we can go to the
Yeah,
consensus.
I'll just do it quickly. So I believe that UN is a very, is a very important part of the world, but then it does not have the right to make decisions for every single country, because nations have the right to self-governance. And secondly, as everybody has said, UN has stopped many wars. I agree with that. But what about the Myanmar civil war? Has anybody ever heard of that? No, it's going for 8 decades, but UN is not spreading anything, not taking any action. They only take action to their interests. For example, the Yemen civil war. Because of Yemen supplying oil to USA, UN is taking action in that. Has anybody even discussed about the Myanmar civil war?
Okay, I'm really sorry to
Okay,
cut you
okay,
guys.
guys.
But
Guys,
can I
can we-
say a point?
guys, okay.
But Considering
let
the
us do it
paucity of
quickly.
time, I
One
think we should
second.
finalize the consensus.
Yeah.
So I'd like to
I think we
summarize
should come to a consensus, decide a
yeah.
conclusion.
according to what
All
we've
the
all
points
discussed.
given here. Okay.
Okay, so according to what we've all discussed here, I believe a central governance body is needed, but given the challenges highlighted, there can be certain reforms for it to be entirely useful. And historical precedent has shown that UN has adapted over time. So reforms, there is a capacity for that.
Okay.
So I think one is
Okay,
global
okay.
representation.
1 second. But the thing is, UN has been it has been existing since immediately after World War II. Thing is, again, it has not stopped many wars. It
I
has not
really don't think we should debate anymore. We
We've
should
got
reach
past this
consensus.
point.
No, guys,
So
guys,
I think
I have a-
we
I
should
have
just
a-
suggest a conclusion here. What I would like to
Guys.
suggest is that instead of approving all of the decisions, the UN acts as a mediator in major decisions or just as a supervisor to ensure transparency and fairness in policies. And collaboration between the UN and other nations is the key to balancing international interests with national autonomy.
Contestants, you have completed your 8 minutes. Contestants, finalists, you have completed your 8 minutes. In fact, you have overshot the time that was given to you. All right? Okay. Well, a difficult topic actually to debate on, not something that would probably, be completed in 8 minutes. So, for now, let's move on to our next round of this grand finale. Coming up is your global perspective. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching TCS ION Intelligent Global Citizenship Grand Finale for the senior category. And our contestants have been speaking exceptionally well, making their points here today in all the rounds so far. Now it's time for us to move into the 4th round, which is called the Global Perspective. What do they have to do? Let's see what we have for them. The SDGs that were published by the United Nations. Now, United Nations has decided to revamp the SDGs, and they have invited all of you to give in your views. You would have to come up with 2 new SDGs for all the countries of the world to follow. But you have to remember that whatever 2 new SDGs you speak of, they cannot in any form or manner be a duplicate of the 17 that are on your screen. Okay? Each of you will have a minute's time, so you can substantiate your argument in that minute's time. Please ensure you stick to the time that has been given to you. Okay, let's start with Shlok. Shlok, you have a minute's time to tell us 2 of the SDGs that you would want to add, or you would want to add the revamp that UN has asked you for. You have a minute's time, starting now.
So my first SDG is going to be clean air for all, which is to reduce gas emissions and enforce stricter regulations on emissions to improve the AQI, reduce pollution, promote clean energy, and increase green spaces in urban areas. This is important to reduce harmful air pollution that impacts health of all and to save the environment and promote sustainability. My second SDG is global digital literacy, which is to ensure universal access to digital education and skills training and allowing everyone to thrive safely in the world of devices. I also believe this is necessary because these days devices are becoming more utilized and will becoming the part of the world. And for economic opportunities, education, and more, this goal is very crucial. Thank you.
Thank you, Shlok. Let's move on to our next finalist here today. Nina, it's your turn. Your minute's time, starting now.
The two new SDGs that I think can be considered are in space. While we have SDGs that deal with climate action, life underwater, and life on land, I feel that the SDGs have ignored space completely, especially as there are concerns about space debris. There needs to be a moral obligation to keep our space clean. And the second SDG that I think could be implemented is ethical technology. Technology is driving our lives, and with AI, there is a threat of greater disruption and invasion of human rights, including violation of privacy. This results in a lot of unanswered and open ethical questions. There needs to be a moral obligation on looking at technology from an ethical lens as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Time for us to move to our next finalist. Arshia, it's your time. Tell us what you think and what your 2 picks would be for SDGs. Go ahead.
We have advanced 10 years since the SDGs inception, and so have our goals. So have our challenges. The SDGs are primarily built on 3 pillars: economic, social, and environmental. I would like to introduce a 4th one, technological. So in today's tech-driven era, like Nina mentioned, ethical technology becomes a huge challenge. So bridging the digital divide ensures affordable access to AI, AR, VR, and other emerging technologies. Ethical use prevents deepfakes, cyber frauds, protects data and IP, and drives innovation, entrepreneurship, societal progress. So yes, I unveil SDG 18, equitable access to technology. But as we fly into the unknown, our wings are built by tradition. So I bring to you SDG 19, revitalize global legacy. An indigenous language vanishes every 2 weeks, and 200 heritage sites have been lost in 50 years. Traditional remedies.
Arshia, you have crossed the time limit. You have crossed the time limit. I will have to stop you. All right. Let's move to our next finalist. Pihu, it's your turn. Tell us what you think about your 2 new SDGs. Your time, starting now.
If I were given the opportunity to add 2 new SDGs, goal number 18 for me would be equity in opportunity. Basically, every individual and every nation has different needs, and each of these needs need to be catered to differently. There should not be one size fits all, but every nation should get their needs fulfilled in a different way, which suits the people and the government. Therefore, there should be equity in opportunities. This would lead to a big change. That is, there would be the formation of a cohesive and close community. Finally, goal number 19 for me would be the interplanetary resource distribution. In the era of space exploration, the resources of the other planets ought to be distributed judiciously between the different countries of the Earth in order to ensure that each of their needs get fulfilled and each of them are able to expand their horizons so that each nation can bring out the best. So I believe that these were the two new SDGs which I would add to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you, Pihu. All right, Arnav, it's your turn now. Tell us what you think. You have a minute's time, starting now.
Greetings, everyone. My two new proposed SDGs are: first, ultimate demilitarization. Today, our world faces extreme humanitarian crises like homelessness, lack of food, lack of sanitation, but the world's nations are engaging in a proxy war of arms and a proxy war of soft power. And these arms are later being the perpetrators of the killings of humans. From collaboration on environment and COVID, we are jumping to a situation of wars. When we as nations are spending $2.5 trillion a year on just our defense budgets, imagine if we put this money into fixing these humanitarian crises, we would holistically grow as a planet. The second goal is holistic refugees. There are around 44 million internationally displaced refugees currently. They're humans just like us, but they have to live in dense and unhygienic camps with no to very meager humanitarian facilities. A major reason for this is conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East and North Africa region. If we can work towards finding these new people a home they can call a house.
I have to stop you. You have overshot your time. Let's move to our last finalist here today. Ishan, it's your turn and you have a minute's time on the topic. Please go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you SDG 18, Mental Health and Equal Access to Treatment. Mental health is often an overlooked aspect of well-being. Establishing universal access to mental health care, reducing the stigma surrounding it, and encouraging talking about issues while promoting emotional resilience is critical for a healthy and productive global society. And now here is the latest SDG, SDG 19, Cybersecurity for All. Since the technology available has developed significantly in recent years and is now driving our lives in the modern era, we must ensure equitable access to the internet, digital literacy, and secure online spaces. This would reduce the digital divide between developed and developing areas and protect people from cybercrime, a prevalent issue today that has only shown signs of increasing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishan. Well, if someone from the United Nations takes a look at this debate here today, I'm sure they'll get some new ideas on how to improvise the SDGs that we already have. Time for us to move into the final round of this grand finale. Coming up is jury time. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome our esteemed jury panel to this grand finale. Let me introduce them to you and let us get to know them a little better. Our first jury member who has joined us here today is Ms. Aparna Mathur. She is a leadership coach, a facilitator with specific areas of focus like mental health, well-being, diversity and inclusion, development sector activist, and she's worked in all of these sectors. She has over 30 years of cross-functional work experience in the areas of coaching, organizational development consulting, sales and project management. She has worked with large, medium and startup organizations like Times of India, Schindler, Mahindra Special Services Group and so on. With over 150 hours of coaching women professionals in particular, Aparna, through her leadership work, has created an impact with organizations like Bharti Airtel, Tata Motors, Indus Towers, Tata Teleservices, PepsiCo, and many more in this list. She is a graduate in psychology and a postgraduate in marketing. She has a passion for creative writing and she blogs on leadership, dance, and life. She has lots of varied interests in life. Aparna, welcome and thank you for making time and joining us in this grand finale. Our second jury member who has joined us here today is Mr. Shravan Shetty. He is an alumnus of the Ohio University. As a well-known leadership speaker and career coach, he has designed and developed and deployed close to 4,000 programs for educational institutions, Fortune 500 companies, as well as social sector organizations from Infosys, ITC, UNDP, UNICEF, United Nations, NAFO Kuwait, Monster Jobs Malaysia, and so on. He is accredited certified career services professional from NCDA USA, and in 2023 he was shortlisted among the top 100 future leaders. Also in 2024 he was recognized for his contribution with the Future of Work Mentor Award. He has served as a jury member on several such panels like today, NSE Upgrad, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Smart India Hackathon, and many more. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Shravan. Lots of United Nations work that you have done. I'm sure you were intrigued with our contestants' perspectives here today. So, both of you will be speaking to 3 of our finalists, since we have 6 of them here today, and you can speak to them on what they have spoken throughout the finale or anything to do with global citizenship. Aparna, let's start with you. Whom would you like to speak with first?
My question to you, Pihu, would be around, I heard you speak very passionately about how UN is not fulfilling their role, and there is a sort of a crisis internally that they're experiencing. If you were UN Secretary General, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Okay, so if I were given the opportunity to become the UN Secretary General, I think my first aim would be to ensure that there is actually equality between the different nations. For example, during the debate, I spoke how there is inequality, especially in the Security Council. So my aim would be to uplift the underdeveloped and the developing countries so that they also get the equal opportunity and the equal share. They are able to speak out their needs so that they are able to take part in the UN in a much better way. That would be my number 1 priority. The second priority would be, of course, the various crises which is going on in the world. I would try my best to make the UN involved in the crisis, whether it is a war or a humanitarian crisis, because at the end of the day, I believe that humanity is our one goal. And there are a lot of people who are affected in wars. So my aim would be to provide aid to such peoples, and that is how I would like to drive the United Nations. Finally, my third goal would be to provide better education to everybody. As we know, education is the most powerful weapon to change the world. As we know, there are still bad literacy rates in the world. I mean, they can improve. They have improved, but they can improve. So my aim would be to ensure UN is engaged in even more education programs, especially in the developing and the underdeveloped nation, so that the people, they get a good capital, human capital, and the countries are able to move towards development.
Thank you, Pihu. Thank you, Aparna. Shravan, whom would you like to speak with?
I would like to speak to Arnav.
Please.
Arnav, it was really interesting that you picked demilitarization and you also focused on refugees. My question to you is that as we are, in 2025 and the geopolitical tensions are increasing, I want to know from you, how do you think as young people, of your age, as you grow older, what would you do to ensure, that there is like a de-escalation of conflicts and more can be done for refugees and to end wars? What do you think can be done by you as a generation? Because clearly we as a generation have failed. We're not getting something right? So your thoughts on it?
Yes, sir. So thank you for the question. So firstly, talking about refugees are mostly prevalent in areas where they are being persecuted or it is a war zone. Now, examples of this can be people in the Ukraine region who have now fled to neighboring countries like Poland and areas in the Baltics and the Balkans. And talking about the MENA region, it's not just Israel, Hamas over there. We have many other conflicts. For example, there's a civil war in Sudan, which is going on right now. And there was the Tigray war in Ethiopia. These conflicts have displaced a lot of people, but they don't have any sort of legal these conflicts who they've been propagated by are definitely the world leaders who have definitely failed at their jobs to keep peace with the world. So what I think as a generation we would do is in the areas of refugees, there should be nations who need more people. areas like Japan and Iceland, they have a paucity of people. They have a paucity of people right now. So these nations should volunteer to take these refugees, because it is very important for us to foremostly improve their conditions, because it is not feasible for them to live in areas where there is a lack of education. There are places where diseases can be breeded, among others. Not talking about how, from a long-term perspective, we will try to demilitarize and de-escalate tensions. Firstly, we should make more stringent laws on foreign intervention. So most wars are caused due to foreign intervention, whether it is the US invasion of Iraq or Russia intervening in Ukraine. There is the Article 2, Clause 4 of the UN Charter, where there is no actionable value to it. So we should have much more stricter regards, and the UN should officially act as a sanctioning body. It should take strict action, no matter if it's the USA, no matter if it's Russia, or no matter if it's a very small country in the South Pacific. They should take stringent action, and we should hold more diplomatic conferences. Instead of taking it to the field, we should take it to conference rooms. I think that is the way we would really develop. And yes, sir, thank you. That would be what I.
Thank you, Arnav. Thank you, Shravan. Aparna, whom would you like to speak to next?
So my next question is to Arshia.
Please.
Yes.
Arshia, I'd like to ask you, as a global citizen, could you speak a little bit about some community-related work that you've already participated in or already done? I heard you speak very eloquently on the role of a global citizen, but I'd like to hear on what are some of the actions that you've already undertaken.
Yes, ma'am. So our school is actually very participative in community works, and we keep donating to NGOs. So we have boxes at our school. So I think among the school student council, and especially me, I've donated a lot of my old books or my old clothes. I think that's the level one. That's the most basic thing we can do as a global citizen. Secondly, I've put up charity stalls, and our revenue was around 10,000. We put up a bakery stall, and we donated that. So around such, and apart from that, as a student level, so like I mentioned, I'm part of the student council. I've been building up my leadership and collaborative skills so that I can adapt to this world and collaborate with more future leaders, because ever since I was born, I've known that I want to do something big. And so yes, definitely. And MUNs, I've been participating in a lot of MUNs. So definitely those are few of the most basic things that I can mention right now.
Thank you, Arshia.
Thank you, Arshia. Thank you, Aparna. Shravan, who would be your next pick? We are left with Shlok, Neena, and Ishan.
My question would be to Ishan.
Please.
So I think one of the key things also as global citizens is that we listen to what voices are there in the room. So Ishan, my question to you actually comes from what Arshia spoke about as one of the new goals that she would introduce, which is to preserve indigenous cultures, right? That was a point. So my question to you, Ishan, is how do you think as global citizens we can, ensure that we can do a bit to preserve indigenous cultures? Let's take India itself as an example, or anywhere across the world. Whatever is your comfort, you can go with that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Right. Okay, so obviously a big part of what makes everyone unique, every culture unique, is the languages they speak, the food they eat, the clothes they wear, and so many other things. And obviously preserving these is a crucial part of modern day global citizenship, because as global interdependence rises, that obviously has a downside, because every coin has two sides. And so in this case, global interdependence also means that more people are tending to favor what they consider to be normalized culture, or like the acceptable culture, rather than embracing their own culture. So ways to embrace indigenous cultures are, suppose you're traveling to a place with roots in indigenous culture or tribal roots, etc. Rather than eating out only in Michelin star restaurants and eating of cuisines of only your taste, trying new things, and maybe embracing their culture rather than just sticking to your comfort zone. So going outside your comfort zone. Additionally, while embracing indigenous culture, we also need to embrace our own culture, because many people are shunning that in favor of, like I said, what popular culture is or what's normalized in today's world. So accepting your own culture, your own roots in terms of your ancestors, etc., that becomes very important before you can pursue the act of preserving indigenous culture. So that is one action I think everyone should take. And yeah, so like you mentioned, there are so many cultures in India that are often overlooked because they are minorities. So one further way to encourage indigenous cultures or preserve them is to give these minorities a voice and give them an opportunity to share their opinions, their ideas, and their needs on a global platform, including things such as politics or the SDGs as such. So I think those are just some actions that can be taken to ensure indigenous culture protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishan. Thank you, Shravan. Aparna, we are now left with Shlok and Nina.
Nina, okay. Nina, my question to you is, you spoke of 2 additional SDGs, but if you had to pick from the existing 17, which one would you pick as something that aligns with your own philosophy and who you are and why?
So personally, I would pick poverty because there are a lot of they don't have enough supply to resources that we need in our daily lives. So we should try to let's say give to others, like donate. So me and a few of my friends in our school, we have started, we are planning on setting up drives so we can give to the people who can't afford or the people who have lower households. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Nina. Thanks, Aparna. Shravan, we are now left with Shlok.
So, Shlok, my question to you is related to the SDG. I think you mentioned, you spoke about clean air, right? Is that
Yes,
right?
sir.
So, we know that very recently there was the United Nations climate conference, which took place recently, which is the COP summits, right? And there usually in these climate conferences, there's a lot of stress on developed countries, developing countries by the developed countries, where they're saying that for countries like India who are developing, or Brazil, the developed countries are saying you need to rein in your,
Carbon footprint.
carbon footprints, and the stress is more on them. Even though historically, if you look at it in terms of industrialization, it's the developed countries who are doing the greatest damage, and they're trying to buy their way out with carbon footprints, right? So according to you, where do you think is the middle path? How does a country like India, balance being there for Earth and for the planet versus economic progress? Because jobs also need to be created, right? So this is the debate. So I just want you to voice your thoughts on this.
So instead of using fossil fuels that can lead up to climate change, the Indian government can instead use hydropower or air power or other renewable energy sources that can also improve the climate and also have economic jobs economically. And India can also try to go more on electricity. For example, if I'm right, then in Norway there was this law passed that if you use Teslas or EVs, then you get less tax for parking fees and stuff. And because of that rule, 75% of Norway uses Teslas and EVs. So if we get one similar law passed in India, then there might be significant changes. And there's already significant change because many Indians are nowadays using EVs more than petrol and diesel cars. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shlok. Thank you, Shravan. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this, we have come to the conclusion of this grand finale. our jury is now tasked with picking the winner from among these amazing finalists that we have with us here today. Let's not forget, we have one winner and all the others would be the joint runners-up. So all of them will go back with some amazing goodies from TCS ION. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching the grand finale of TCS ION Intelligem Global Citizenship for the senior category. Time for us to figure out who that winner will be. But you don't go anywhere. There are many other finals of Intelligem that are coming up. Stay back and watch them, and we will be back with the winners. You take care.